Let's warp up and weave a 2-1 twill on a rigid heddle loom. Hi everyone, it's Steph and welcome to another video. In the last video we looked at understanding twill on a rigid heddle loom, and this video I want to show you how to warp and weave a 2-1 twill and how to add some floating selvages. Let's get started. To make this a little easier, I'm going to warp this in groups of 6 threads so that each group of 6 threads will be a different colour, and that will make the warping and the threading a lot easier to understand. To start with, we are going to warp 4 threads through the first slot. So that's pulling 2 loops through the first slot, leaving 4 threads. Moving to the next slot, we want 2 threads in that slot. So just pull 1 loop through like you would normally. And that makes the first 6 threads, which is the first 6 of our sequence. We will then continue this across the width of our warp, each 6 threads being a different colour. So 4 threads in the first slot, 2 threads in the second slot, and then changing to a different colour. This will make a lot more sense when we get to the threading. So this is what it's looking like now, and I would advise when you're doing this for the first time, stop every so often and just double check that you've done the right thing. So 4 threads, 2 threads, change colour, 4 threads, 2 threads, change colour, because it's a lot easier to fix it at this stage than it is at a later stage. This is an optional thing. A floating selvage helps to make your selvages nice and neat, and the reason is that every 3rd or 4th pick you'll end up missing the edge because of the pattern, and that makes a little divot in your selvage. So to keep your selvages edges nice and neat and straight, we use floating selvages. All this is adding 1 thread as a single thread on the slot either side of your weaving width. So the very first slot and the very last slot, just by themselves, we're adding in a single thread. This floating selvage will then be wound onto the back beam with the rest of your weaving when you wind on. To do this, when you have finished warping up, simply tie on your thread on the apron rod, pull a loop through that very first slot. When you get to your warping peg, just measure where you want that to end. Tie a little overhand knot, slip the knot over the end of the peg and snip off the excess so that you're not pulling that second thread back through the loom. Do that on both sides, and this is what it looks like. Now you can wind on using your preferred method, and let's have a look at threading. First, move your heddle to the back position, ignore your floating selvage, and then we're going to pull out those first 6 threads, pull them out entirely and hang them on the top of the loom, and we're going to thread them like this. Take the first thread of the 6 and thread it through the hole that is slightly to the left of the slot that they were already in. The next 2 threads we're going to put in the slot to the right of the hole where the first thread went in, and we're going to repeat this with the next 3 threads. So thread number 4 goes in the next hole, thread number 5 and 6 go in the next slot, so it looks a little bit like what's on the diagram. The brown thread to the very left is your floating selvage, which we're going to ignore until we get to the second heddle. Now pull out the next 6 threads, pull them out entirely, pop them on the top of the heddle. And this is a good way to make sure that they are on the top of the heddle in the same order that they're coming off the back beam, so that you don't twist any threads. It's not the end of the world if you do, it just makes things a lot neater and a lot easier. So we're going to continue doing this, the first thread in the next hole, the second and third threads in the next slot, the fourth thread in the next hole, and the fifth and sixth thread in the next slot. And we're going to continue this for the entire warp. As you're threading, stop every so often and just grab a bundle and knot them together with a very loose overhand knot. And this just helps to protect in case the heddle gets knocked off, and also just helps you organize all of your threads. I also find it easier to remove the 6 threads and then divide them up into the 4 bundles, and it just makes the threading go a little bit quicker, a little bit easier, and helps you to not make mistakes. And I'll show you a couple of bundles that I do. Weaving the 2-1 twill on a rigid heddle loom isn't as complicated as you might think, and as you go through this video you'll see as I break things up into small steps, it's actually really quite easy, I guess, like most things when you know how. Continue doing this across the entire warp until you get to the very last one, and then just make sure that your floating selvage is in the very last slot all by itself. Then we can move on to the front heddle. Now pop the front heddle on. If you wish, you can actually connect the front and back heddle together using a rubber band. This helps to protect just in case the front heddle falls off. But I find this annoying because I like to get my hand in between the heddles, but it's your choice. Pull out your floating selvage and pop it to the side. We're going to ignore that for now. Then grab those first 6 threads. So in this case, it's a bright orangey red color. So I'm going to grab all of those out, pop them on the front of the heddle, and rest the remainder of the bundle off to the side. So here you can see 2 threads that have been through the back holes and the 4 threads that have been through the back 2 slots. I'm going to show this at a different angle to make it a little clearer. So we've got the 2 from the holes and then the 2 bundles from the slots, making the 6 threads. I'm going to separate the 2 that were in the holes in the back heddle and rearrange them so that I've got 1 hole thread from the back, 2 slot threads, 1 hole thread, and 2 slot threads from the back. Now, if we have a look at this to see how we're going to thread these, that first thread that's in the hole at the back, we're going to pop that into the slot that's to the left of where it lines up in the front heddle. This is the most difficult part. Once you get this right, everything else will fall into place. So if you line up your heddle hole in the front to the heddle hole at the back, you want to thread this thread through the slot that is to the left of the hole that it lines up to. Once that's done, you can then separate the next 2 threads. So thread number 2 goes in the consecutive hole to the right of where you've just popped thread number 1. Thread number 3 goes into the slot to the right. And then we can repeat that with the next 3 threads. So the 4th thread goes into the same slot as thread 3. Your 5th thread goes into the hole and your 6th thread goes into the slot so that it looks like the diagram. So here we can see if we pull the 3 shafts. So now that we've got that sorted, we can then pick the first empty slot to the left of where we've started threading and pop our floating selvage thread in there, and now we can continue. Now let's grab the next 6 threads. So for me, this is this burgundy red color. Separate the back hole threads from the back slot threads, you can clearly see the 3 bundles. The first 2 are the back holes, and the second 2 are the first slot, the third 2 are the other back slot. We separate the first 2 threads so that we've got 1 back hole thread, 2 back slot threads, 1 back hole thread and 2 back slot threads. Now we can see we've got a group of 4 threads. Starting from left to right, the first thread goes into the same slot as thread 6 from the first bundle. Thread 2 goes into the next hole. Thread 3 goes into the next slot. Then you've got the next 3, and thread 4 goes into the same slot. Thread 5 goes into the hole, and thread 6 goes into the next slot. So it sounds complicated, but it actually isn't. And I think once you get your head round it, it will make so much sense. After each 6 threads, I like to go back and just double check and make sure that I can see 3 clear shafts or 3 clear lines when I pull down or pull up on the threads. Then I like to tie off just in case I knock that front heddle off and lose all of my threading. Yes, I have done it. No, I was not a happy girl. Here I've just got a different view on what the 3 shafts look like in between the heddles, and this is a great way of checking to make sure that you haven't twisted any threads behind the heddle. Here I want to show you where I have twisted something behind. I can see that there is something missing when I pull down from the very bottom shaft. And that one is stuck in the second shaft, which means I have twisted behind the heddle here. So here you can see I've got one thread that is wrapped around another thread, which is making a loop. And I need to fix that now because that's really going to interfere with having a nice clean shed when it comes to weave. So I pulled that particular thread out, rethreaded it again properly. So now it's not looping around any other threads. And now you can see here I've got beautiful clean 3 shafts, and I can go ahead and tie that off and get on to the next bundle. Oh, I also forgot to mention, once you've finished threading the front heddle, the next available slot is where you pop that floating selvage, and that's all you need to do for the floating selvages. So here I'm just showing you a couple more really quickly. Then once you've finished everything and tied everything off, go through and double check, and I can't say this enough, double check to make sure there's no twisted threads in between the heddles, or there's no errors, just by grabbing a bundle and checking that you've got 3 clear sheds. And once that's all done, you can go ahead and lash on and spread the warp, and then we're ready to weave. Now let's have a look at each of the sheds. Shed number 1 is created with the front heddle up, the back heddle remains neutral, and you can see here we've got a nice clear shed. In the diagram on I Weave It, this is represented by all of the ones in the top threading diagram and the first circle in the drawdown box, which is down next to the ones. So our first shaft is created by all of those threads going through the front heddle holes, which creates shed number 1. Shed number 2 is created by putting the front heddle in neutral and the back heddle up. This shaft is created by the threads going through the back heddle holes. So we're lifting those back heddle holes up to create that shed. And we can see we've got quite a nice shed here. This is represented by all of the 2s in the threading diagram from iWeave It and the second circle in the drawdown box. The third shed is created by putting both heddles in the down position. This moves all of the hole threads out of the way and puts the slot threads at the top, and that will create our shed. The shaft is created by all of the threads going through the back and front heddle slots. This shed can be a little sticky, but I've got some tips and tricks for you coming up to help you with that. So here are some tips for some nice clean sheds that will work for any 2 heddle weaving. First, front heddle up, and you can see that there are lots of sticky threads. If we wriggle the front heddle, nothing really happens, but if we wriggle the back heddle, you can see a lot of those sticky threads all just drop out of the way, and we've got a nice, clear, clean shed that we can then weave from. The second shed, you can see back heddle up. We've got lots of sticky threads here. So if we just wriggle that front heddle, that's going to really encourage them to go where they need to go. And here we've got our nice clean shed. The third one, both heddles down, you can see this is a really sticky shed, and I'm just going to move the camera so you can see it better. So I've got a tip. Put the front heddle down first, then comb the back heddle down before you put it in the down position. And there you can see we've got a beautiful, clear, clean shed to weave from. So here is our weaving sequence. Front heddle up, wriggle the back heddle, throw our pick. We're also going to check here our floating selvages line up with our shed so we don't have to manipulate. Then we beat. Second, back heddle up, wriggle that front heddle, and now I have to go under the selvage shed, so I'm going to lift that last one, first one up, lift the last one up to go through. Then I can beat. I find it easy just to release that back heddle, pop the front one in the down position, comb the back one down, and then I'm checking my selvages. I need to go over these, so I'm going to pop them down, pop the other one down, and weave through. Super easy, super simple once it's all set up. I will now take you through those selvages. Now with your floating selvages, think of them as under, over, under, over. So on each shed, you're either going over your floating selvage or under your floating selvage. And it's really easy to tell. Here you can see that the last weft we did went over. So the next one needs to be under. Sometimes this aligns perfectly with your shed and you don't have to manipulate. Sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't, then you have to physically lift or drop those selvage sheds to weave around them. And that will give you that nice, neat edge to your weaving. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this video provided some value to you and taught you that 2-1 twill on a rigid heddle loom isn't all that complicated once you know how. As always, if you wish to support me, please hit that like button. That really helped me out. Subscribe if you haven't already, and super thanks are also available. Thank you so much, everyone. I sincerely hope that you have a wonderful day, and this project I'm weaving, hopefully I'll be able to release to you next weekend. I do apologise that it's taken a couple of weeks, but this video actually took a lot longer than what I thought it would to get this out to you. But thank you for your patience. Have a wonderful day.